anything that you would like to add?
I've decided to retire from education after 38 years of teaching because I don't think I can do this right now. I still love what I do, and I loved it up to the end. But I feel like the legislators have beaten us down. And I hope that some way we find a way to fight our way back up to the top.
Education, there is a bar, and it's up here, and never ever lower the bar. Bringing the kids up to the bar. It's your job every single day to come in and to be prepared and to be excited and to love your material and to love the kids and bring them up to that level. That's your job.
I teach social studies in 5th grade, and the most important part of that is not memorizing the dates and the names and the places, or even the wars, but providing a shared sense of culture. That's what public education is about.
If you can dream big and you can think of anything that you want to do, education, especially public education, where anything's possible, all of our children have that capacity to do that.
Morale has never been lower in public schools, and that's a shame. It really is. So why am I still here? That's a good question. That's an excellent question. I guess because I hope to make a difference. I hope to make a difference.
School days, Golden Rule days. What is the Golden Rule? It's an ethic of reciprocity. Simply stated, treat others how you want them to treat you. Times have changed since Will Cobb and Gus Edwards wrote the song School Days in 1907. Journalist and historian Henry Adams said, "A teacher affects eternity." But it's as if the slate has been wiped clean of the original intent of education. reading and writing and arithmetic taught to the tune of a hickory stick. Today, it feels like the hickory stick is coming down on our teachers, the very ones who affect eternity.
They've taken the education, the profession that I love, and turned me into a number. And on that number, I'm either green, red, or yellow. And the funny thing about it is I don't get to see that number. I don't get to see whether I'm green, yellow, or red. And I hate the perception of how most people look at teachers, because we're all very, very hardworking, and we all love our children. And they don't see that part.
In Indiana, teachers' evaluations boil down to the colors of a traffic light. The state brands teachers with a color: green, highly effective; yellow, needs improvement; or red, ineffective. Would we evaluate other professionals by the stoplight method? Indiana fifth grade teacher Diana Rathert retired early, even though she loves to teach. Governmental rules, tests, lack of money, and elimination of the arts all have taken a toll, because teachers no longer have control.
I think the other thing that's terribly demoralizing is the view of policymakers that teachers need to be incentivized either by money or by threats. They need to be offered a bonus because they're not working hard enough, or they need to be threatened that they might be fired. And this is demoralizing. It's so non-professional. It's so demeaning to teachers to say you're not working hard enough, so we're going to wave some money in front of your face and you can all compete for the door prize.
Legislators were once kindergarten students, learning their ABCs. Each probably has a favorite teacher who inspired them through open discussions, experiments, field trips, poetry.
Come to my classroom. Spend a day with me. Come and see these kids. Come and watch them learn. Come and watch them struggle. See how they're dressed. See what they eat. See what we do. We have twin granddaughters that live in California, the love of our lives. I would not encourage them to move to Indiana right now to be educated. That's how concerned I am about the restrictive legislation that has been placed on public education. It's not right, and it's not good for the future.
Since the landing at Plymouth Rock, citizens, educators, and politicians have debated the best way America should fulfill its duty to educate children. Today, school choice, charters, vouchers, testing, and a one-size-fits-all model of public education are hot emotional issues. The goals are lofty: provide equal access to quality education for all students, not just the privileged; raise standards of quality; spawn innovation and inspire students. But as promising as these objectives may appear on paper, each produces unintended consequences that tarnish the golden rule. So what can we do? First, before we can fix what is wrong and lift up what is right, we need to know what's really going on inside our schools while they cope with the new paradigms.
If you were to follow me for a day, you would start off with me getting here before my contracted time, answering all the emails that I've gotten from the night before, teaching my students during the class time and working with them, walking around as much as possible, using my entire prep hour to then document what I've done with them so that I can reflect. You would see me after school past my contracted hours. You would see me in the summer working on lesson plans and creating curriculum maps so that I'm sure I'm covering all the state standards. You would see me never sashaying in the hallway because there's no time to walk slowly. You shout hello to somebody in passing and that's all there's time for.
Remember when you first learned to read? the wondrous enchantment you felt when you saw a word materialize from a string of letters. And when words marched along like soldiers in a perfect row, you could, for the first time, read a complete thought, a sentence, a revelation, magic.
Mr. Dave Ruth was my 6th grade teacher, and Mr. Ruth was wonderful. Instead of talking about science out of a book and reading only about it, he would take us on a field trip and he would show us things. And our science test once was walking through Happy Hollow Woods and identifying things that he wanted us to identify to him. So we had a clipboard and paper and pencil and the magic of the woods that caused the learning.
Margaret Pissarros and her family were war refugees from Cyprus. They fled to live in Chicago when she was 3. Today, Margaret is an elementary school principal.
When I started going to school, the school that I was in Chicago, as a kindergartner and 1st grader and part of 2nd grade, I didn't feel that it was an environment that I would consider safe now, looking back at it. We had playgrounds that had fences that felt like sky high to a kindergartner at the time, and it just felt like we were caged in a lot. It didn't feel like we had a safe environment. And playgrounds often will have borders around them, but this felt like a cage. It didn't feel like a border.
Margaret's first few years of education in an undesirable school environment gave her a point of comparison for her future profession.
I started going to Morton Elementary School in West Lafayette and had Mrs. Hazard as my teacher, and Mrs. Hazard made me laugh. She made me enjoy reading. She made me just really get excited about school. But she would have this talent to change voices, to get these characters out of these books, and she would make that book come alive. And that stood out with me because it was new. It was a new feeling that I'd never had before.
That feeling was the thrill of learning. Today, Margaret is a principal in the same Indiana school system she attended as a child. One of many systems facing the pressure of standardized tests, like the primary Indiana test called ISTEP.
We are spending far too much time now doing things that are not those magical moments. And one of the benefits that I found in my 6th grade year with Mr. Ruth was that testing didn't have to be paper and pencil. It was out in the woods, and it was identifying things that he had talked about, and it was, why can't you integrate all those things that you've learned into a final on the run in the woods? So that's how it felt to me. It didn't have to be an ISTEP in a book.
Standardized testing is the new bully in school, pushing and prodding to make the grade, leaving no time or energy for classroom creativity. Inspiration cowers in the corner, a forgotten wallflower of public education.
In Indiana, we have the most noxious feature now, this 3rd grade reading requirement, that if a student doesn't pass this I Read 3 test, they will be held back. Ridiculous pressure to place on a child in 3rd grade. It's just astonishing.
When a child picks up a pencil to take a state exam, she determines the evaluation of her teacher, principal, and school. Pressure is placed on teachers and schools to become test prep factories. Most disconcerting is the unfair and unnecessary burden placed on the shoulders of a child.
The problem we have with testing in this country today is that, number one, we're using the wrong kinds of tests, and number two, we're using the tests in the wrong kinds of ways.
What the standardized test does over time is that it rewards conformity. It rewards people who can pick the right bubble, 1 out of 4 bubbles. It punishes divergent thinking. It punishes creativity. It punishes originality. And if you think about what that's going to do to this country over the long haul, we are raising a generation of children who've been taught that there's only one right answer, there are no shades of gray, and that they must always pick the right answer or they'll be punished. Their teacher might be fired, their school might be closed. This is absurd.
Students answer questions designed by measurement experts, not their teacher. They lose more than a week of their education to take time for testing, so their teacher can be ranked and sorted on a bell curve and assigned a number. And after all that effort and time, the teacher evaluation number merely replicates information the principal already knows.
Our teachers are phenomenal, and I think they really understand children, and they know before a test is given how those students are going to perform. They can feel that based on their everyday moments. Every time they go and ask a question of a student, or every time they ask them to respond to a question of theirs, they know how those students are performing.
And the fact that testing has become such a huge piece of it is sending the wrong message to kids that they're successful if they can pass a test or get through a test. And that's not what's going to make them successful in life. And that's the thing that worries me.
Successful education systems use standardized tests sparingly. They understand that the money and time used for testing can be put to a more positive use, helping teachers and schools. Fruitful systems accentuate the positive, opening minds with the freedom to explore, to teach, and to learn. Finland's school system ranks as one of the world's best, with no high-stakes testing and lots of customization in the classroom.
Standardized test was never invented to close schools to evaluate teachers. Standardized tests were developed for diagnostic purposes to determine how a student is doing. If you look at what the best systems in the world do, they use standardized tests, if any, for diagnostic purposes.
In Finland, for example, we can use standardized assessments so that we take a sample of students or sample of schools rather than employ these tests so that we test everybody all the time.
If we want to hold schools accountable, there are a variety of ways to do that, and we don't have to be paying testing companies $250 million to test whether or not our students have the information that we expect them to know.
It has become so expensive to run in many countries, including here in the United States, to design high-quality standardized tests, employ them, administrate them, and then use the data, that I simply believe that we should be using part of these resources for trying to improve teachers, improve teaching in schools, rather than measure again and again.
Public education's measure of success should be the number of inspired minds that pour from the classroom, ready to do their part in their niche of the world. Inspiration moves in to make itself comfortable in a stress-free, imaginative learning environment.
It's almost as though you have to have a complete makeover of your mental approach to teaching, to realize I can now do projects, I can now do activities, I can now look at each child as an individual and not a test score. And I don't have to worry about the bubble kids, I have to worry about every child reaching his or her full potential.
Students should enjoy learning. We should be motivating them. We should be exciting them. We should be prompting their curiosity to learn. And instead, now it's become a race to memorize.
And I still keep looking for, where is the leadership? Where's the political leadership? Where's the governor? Where are the senators who will stand up and say, you know what we've been doing is wrong. We've now had a dozen years of No Child Left Behind. We have lots of children left behind. It didn't work.
When I teach lessons that are more creative or simple reading unit, let's read something. Come to the library and get a book that you like and read it and tell me what you think of it. They go, why? What? Is there a test on it? No, there is no test on it. We're just gonna read it and we're gonna like it. And they ask me for more direction. They want me to give them a very specific prompt to tell them what to do. And that's what they've been trained to do, and they're doing it well. And that's kind of sad.
Well, school choice is expected.
Thrown into the mix of education reform are charters and vouchers. Charters are public schools, funded by taxpayers and promoted as open to all. But across the United States, charter schools aggressively screen student applicants. Funding for charter schools comes primarily from the states, so as more charters open, less money is left for traditional public schools.
We thought that charters were going to reach out to the neediest kids, and with vouchers, the promise was that they would save children from failing schools. But that was 20-something years ago. Milwaukee's had vouchers since 1990, which is well over 20 years ago. Cleveland has had them since 95, and we now have at least 20 years of charters around the country. So we have evidence. We didn't have evidence 20 years ago. What we know today is that charters and vouchers do not get different results from public schools if they're serving the same children. So with all of these advocacy groups, they're not even think tanks, they're advocacy groups pushing for charters and vouchers. What they're really pushing for is privatization. They can't make an argument that charters get better results because the ones that get better results are very few, and many of those that get better results are skimming. They're taking the best kids, they're kicking out the low-performing kids. They're not taking a fair share of children with disabilities or children who don't speak or read English.
Unlike what our founders in the Constitution saw as a common system of schools, we will now have two systems of schools. One to serve all students, the public school system, and another private parochial school system funded by tax dollars where school officials will have the authority to pick and choose which students they allow.
The public school in American history is an important democratic institution. It was never intended to be a market institution. And the charter and voucher people have no science, they have no evidence. All they can say is you need a choice, but it's usually not a better choice. Sometimes it's a worse choice. Public schools do every bit as well as charter schools and the voucher schools.
Vouchers are state-funded scholarships that pay for students to attend private school rather than public school. Vouchers put public education in direct competition with private education, often reducing or reallocating funding from public to private schools.
I had an interesting conversation right after the voucher bill was approved with the superintendent of the Catholic diocese in this area. And he was talking about how they were gearing up for voucher students. And I asked him, I said, do you expect to be allowing voucher students among the Burmese and Somali refugees relocated to our city by Catholic Charities? And he very quickly said, no, they wouldn't be comfortable here. And I thought that was very interesting that they were so eager to accept voucher students, argue that they provide a better education than the public schools, but the refugee students, they can stay with the public schools, and we don't have any interest in serving them. And I thought that was very telling, and a little bit disturbing as well.
The charter school community is extremely diverse. You know, you have some charter schools that are serving high-need populations and, in some cases, well-integrated populations of kids in very productive and innovative ways. But the charter school reform is not a panacea, it's not magic, and there are a lot of charter schools that are performing much less well than district-run public schools. In fact, the largest study of charter schools found that charter schools were about twice as likely to underperform public schools serving the same population as they were to outperform those schools.
We will give our hearts to the children of Indiana to make Indiana the best education state in our country.
Indiana's former superintendent of public instruction, Tony Bennett, was once the ballyhooed hero of the movement bent on reshaping public education through the use of charters, vouchers, standardized testing, and teacher evaluations. With his signature A to F school grading system, Bennett promised to hold so-called failing schools accountable. In the 2012 Indiana election, Bennett lost in an upset to award-winning teacher and underdog Glenda Ritz. Ritz was practically an unknown before she ran with the promise of an educational agenda, not a political agenda.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I dare say this is the last time I'll ever be on a stage like this, so I'm going to sign off by saying I have no regrets.
In the summer of 2013, while Bennett was in his new position as Education Commissioner of Florida, it was discovered through publicly accessible emails that Bennett and his education team had made a manipulative move. When he was still Indiana superintendent, it appeared that an Indianapolis charter school run by a prominent Republican donor would receive a poor grade. Bennett had touted that Crystal House Academy would perform as an A school, but troublesome high school data gave evidence that the charter school was not performing as Bennett had promised. In reality, Crystal House had earned a C. Frustrated, Bennett frantically put his team into action. The charter's grade deceivingly changed from a C to an A.
Munster High School has been recognized by Newsweek, by the Washington Post, as one of the best high schools in the nation. We have received recognition from the College Board and from the Indiana Department of Ed for our Advanced Placement Program. This past year, our performance passing rate was 91.3% with the ECAs, end of course assessments. A couple years ago, you gave us those goals. At that time, we didn't meet the goal of 90% ECAs. I went back to my staff, and we decided that that was a good goal to meet. And now I have to go back to them and tell them that we met the goal that you set before us, but now you're going to be rated as a C.
And so it came down to all the numbers say that your school is an A, except this one little criteria about graduation rate for special needs students, and we missed it by one student who then passed his 9th semester, which was his 5th year. But yet, because he can't do it in 4 years, it turns us from an A to a C school. One student.
You don't want your high-performing schools being rated as a C. When now in a new voucher system, which you've created, we have a level of competition for schools now. So in an era of competition, which I support, in an era of accountability I support, make the accountability metric accurate and give us a fighting chance as a public school.
On the one hand, the rules are the rules, and the metrics were the metrics, and everybody knew what the metrics were, and you play the game based on the rules. You may not like the rules, and then you want to change the rules for the future, that's fine, but at the moment you're playing by the rules as they were set, and they're the same rules for everybody.
When a rule hurts a public school, it's okay. But when it hurts a school that's part of this privatization movement, they need to change things. And it felt like we didn't matter. It felt like public schools didn't matter.
Only 33% of Crystal House Academy's sophomore class passed algebra testing. So Tony Bennett and his team decided to favor the charter school by removing this principal factor.
Our kids passed the algebra test at 94%. That was a goal that we wanted to reach, and we did. We were much higher than 33%.
While Crystal House Academy's 33% algebra score was completely dropped out of the equation to raise its overall grade only 1 year prior, Munster Public Schools were denied flexibility to eliminate one student's low performance rating that kept them from an A. Tony Bennett readily made exceptions for his favorite charter school, but not for a public school.
You know, I wanted to go back and hug some of my teachers because they felt like they did something wrong. They felt like when we got a C that they were the responsibility. They felt responsible. And yet, you see this and you go, you just go, wow. I mean, that's the best word you could say is, wow.
The founder of Crystal House has given millions to Republicans, including $130,000 directly to Bennett's campaign.
I made the comment to my wife, well, I guess if I would have walked down with $100,000, we may have gotten our grade changed from a C to an A. And that's how I felt.
After his Indiana wrongdoings were made public, Bennett resigned as Florida Education Commissioner. This time, Tony Bennett was held accountable.
I made a decision today in light of the malicious, unfounded reports out of Indiana that it's not fair to the children of Florida that I continue as commissioner and deal with the distractions.
Many reformers see charters and vouchers as the answer to failing traditional schools. But there are problems with that conclusion. Some charters create the illusion of greater success by discouraging low-income students from enrolling.
So as students migrate out of schools that are not doing well, those schools get worse. They get worse in part because they are more and more full of kids who are harder to educate. And when that happens, teachers who have choices choose not to teach there, which makes them even worse. Which is why when you add up the whole picture, you see these schools getting better and those schools getting worse, and you see no net change. Is that really what we want? You can be for choice, as I am, by the way, because you think it's right for students and teachers and parents to have choices. But you have an awfully hard time being for choice because you believe it improves the performance of the schools, the system, or the students. There is no evidence for that. There is not only no evidence for that in the United States, there is no evidence for that anywhere in the world. I defy you to point to a top-performing country that got that way by introducing choice systems.
We have a very equitable system because we have insisted that every school has to be a good school. Every school and every district has to have good teachers in their school. Every school must have a good principal, but we still have school choice. The parents can still choose the school or influence in the school choice where they want to have their children go to. But the difference is that all the schools are public schools. So the parents' choice is between public school and another public school.
What you're looking at are countries in which not only is the average level of performance going up, but the variation in performance among schools is going down. So it makes less and less difference which school you go to, you're still getting a first-class education, no matter where you go. Finland is the poster child for that. What we're doing with our choice systems in the United States is the opposite. We're making the difference between the better off and the less well off greater every day, without changing the average performance.
It's a segregation.
We're segregating our schools. Right. In my mind, that's a disaster.
You know, from the numbers that I've heard about in Indiana, it's clear that somebody figured out how to defund public education. I mean, when you think about it, the vouchers, the charter schools, the public schools, they're all drawing from the same pot, and the pot is shrinking. The best thing you could do is just to tell the public what's going on. People really don't understand, and they think that when they hear charters and vouchers, oh, that's nice, there's choice. They don't realize every dollar going to those schools is coming out of your local public school. And the more successful your school, the more it gets punished.
In Indiana, legislators have taken the control of education funding away from local school boards, particularly the general fund. The general fund is the chunk of cash that pays for instruction, maintenance, and operating schools. The general fund is the heartbeat fund. It pays for the most important elements of teaching our kids. Historically, Indiana schools have been funded with local property taxes. But recently, the legislature removed the heartbeat fund from local property taxes and shifted local control to State House control. This gave legislators the power to shift and thus cut money from this critical fund that pays for our teachers. What that means is it's difficult to track what is happening with the money that's the backbone which enables our schools to exist. David Hummels and Larry DeBoer, economists at Purdue University, led an analysis of Indiana school funding. Their findings show that despite the rhetoric of Indiana politicians, over the last 10 years, education funding has been reduced dramatically, with the biggest cuts coming to our highest achieving schools.
I want to go back 15 years to 1998. In that year, the average per pupil spending in the state was about $4,700 per kid. I think it's a little easier to think of that in terms of how much money does a single classroom get. So let's take an average classroom, 21, 22 kids. That's right around $100,000 for that classroom. Now, that probably seems like a lot of money, but it pays for a teacher. It pays for any instructional aides, teacher's aides in the classroom. It pays for physical education and music and art and the cafeteria and the library and the school principal and the counselors and any maintenance. Basically, almost everything the school does is going to come out of that $100,000 per classroom. So 1998, $100,000. And over the next 5 years, up through 2002, 2003, the money edged up very slowly. And so by 2002, you were looking at about $107,000 per classroom, just slightly keeping ahead of inflation. At that point, 2002 is really the high water mark for education funding in the state of Indiana. And everything since then has been downhill. So probably the simplest way to think about it is if you just look at the dollar values put into the schools, it looks like the dollar values are slowly moving upwards. $50 this year, $100 next year, that sort of thing per child. But then you have to take into account that costs of running the schools are rising sharply over time. Inflation is eating away the value of those dollars. So inflation is this kind of termite that slowly eats away at the value of the dollars being spent. The energy needed to heat and light the buildings is getting more expensive. Textbook costs are going through the roof. Health insurance premiums more than doubled in that period, and they went from 20 to 30% of personnel costs. Okay, so energy, textbooks, health insurance costs, those are all inflationary costs that are out of control of the schools. There's nothing the school can do really to avoid incurring those costs. So what we have, once you take into account those rising costs, those termites eating away at the value of the dollars. Our classroom that had $100,000 in 1998 and $107,000 in 2002 is down all the way to about $82,000. In 10 years, that's a cut of almost a quarter of the money available to the average classroom to educate those kids. In addition to that, you have, over the last several years, a number of episodes in which there were sharp, unpredicted, and difficult to accommodate cuts. So in the recession, we had a $300 million cut to the schools. And then again the year after that, and again the year after that. And so the accumulated cuts there were nearly $1 billion. But a simple way to think about the impact of those cuts is to ask how much of the state's total income is being devoted to these educational expenses. If we go back to 2002, the high watermark for funding, it was only 2.7% of state's total income in Indiana. Today, it's more like 2.2%. So this has been a conscious political decision to devote less and less of our state's resources to funding education. So how does a school adjust to those kinds of steady, every year cuts in the resources available to teach? So what do? You cut the supply budget. You go from offering PE and music and art 3 days a week down to 2 days a week. You decide, I can't afford to send my teachers to a conference to learn new instructional technology for math and science classrooms. Maybe you used to have a teacher's aide in the classroom who could help with kids who are falling behind with reading and math. Well, you let go of the teacher's aide, so now there's no one to help with that remediation. You let class sizes grow just a little bit. You don't double them in size, you add a few more kids to every classroom. And so every day, each kid gets just a little bit less time from their teacher. And you encourage experienced teachers to retire so that you can replace them with low-cost novice instructors. None of that's a disaster. None of that is anything you could point to and say, my school's terrible now. It's just termites eating at the foundation of educational quality. And as we know, termites can stay down there in the basement for year after year after year, and eventually the building collapses.
I just wanted to call you out and sing your face for you and congratulate you on yesterday. That was a huge accomplishment. You feel good about it? Yeah. Well, I'm proud of that. Are you proud of it? Yeah. That's good. Can I get a high five? That's good. Well, I haven't seen you come down with
Stephen came to Margaret School as a fourth grader with challenges. He was not completing his homework. Academic struggles led to behavioral issues. As his principal, Margaret wanted to be proactive, giving him attention before he had trouble rather than after. Margaret and Stephen met on a regular basis.
Sometimes if he was heading to a location, I would ask him where he's going and walk with him and then just talk about how he's doing. And so I tried to check in with him as much as I could to be able to help him stay on track.
She's given me advice, like I should get my work done so I could like be a football player, because if you don't get your grades up, you can't play football.
One thing I will always remember about Mr. Curtis, my principal in elementary school at West Lafayette, was that he would spend a lot of time with me during lunch, and I would always be the last or second to last or close to that finishing my lunch. And so Mr. Curtis would sit next to me and talk about the benefits of chewing your food well and your digestive system, and turned it into a learning lesson for me, but also helped me feel good about the fact that I was taking a little longer finishing my lunch. And he would sit with me and just chat, and we would talk about life and things that were happening in my classroom that I appreciated.
Today, Margaret tries to connect with as many students as she can in the hallways and at lunch. But the burden of paperwork and teacher evaluations has taken a toll on the amount of time she has to bond with students in the casual, everyday moments. Far too often, she's stuck behind her desk filling out forms. Margaret doesn't want to lose the moments in her day when she can help faltering students, like she helped Stephen.
I think he was heading down a very bad path. He was very angry. He seemed very discouraged. He didn't feel like he could do it himself. He could do it on his own, and we knew that, but he did not. I don't think he believed that. We had to help him get there.
If you fall down, she can pick you back up.
What do you mean by that?
Like if you fall behind in your homework, she can help you.
From where I'm sitting with my son, yeah, she put in a little extra work than normal from where I was raised at. I was raised in a very different school environment.
Over and over, I would tell him, I believe in you. And I know at the beginning he probably thought I was crazy, because I don't think he believed that I did believe in him. And so that message had to be shared often. And I think he now knows he can do it. But he also knows that people believe in him and support him in getting there.
When somebody believes you, that makes you feel better and feel more confident. And you can get it done more easily.
Across the United States, there are principals, teachers, and students like Margaret and Stephen. For academic success, children need their teachers and principals working alongside their parents. Teachers and principals need time to offer students flexibility and adaptability. Children need time.
It's frustrating because the kids need us, and the needs don't go away just because paperwork comes on. So adding all that has been an extreme challenge, and I fight it daily trying to do what I want to do compared to what I need to do.
Well, speaking on her, I mean, I know it's probably other principals in the same position, but this one, it would be a shame for them to take her away. And there's a lot of other kids that really need her. You know, she pretty much saved Stephen from where I'm sitting. That's why I came down here. But for them to take that part of her job away, it'll be a tragedy. And that's the honest to God truth.
The principal is not our CEO, but our mentor, to galvanize our teachers, to inspire our children of every race, sex, economic background, disability, and ability. That's public education for all. Public education is not a business, it's a right, and a freedom, and an investment in America.
As everyone knows, if you're the CEO of a company, you're not going to take defective materials or or less than quality materials at the entry point for your manufacture. But in public education, we encourage every student, despite whatever issues they have, handicaps, whatever their status is, we welcome them and we try to help each and every one of those students. So it's not a one-size-fits-all product at the end. We're trying to help each student. It's not like we're manufacturing. We pour the knowledge in their heads and move them on to the next stage in the process.
Well, I think that Indiana is one of the leading states in the country where you've got a corporate approach to education, a business model, and they want to turn everything over to private management, and they will talk the talk, and it all sounds very, they've got all the good rhetoric, but what they really want is return on investment. They want to see the data. They want to have the metrics. It's as though they don't have children. Nobody there seems to talk about education. They just talk about a corporate model of management. And education shouldn't work that way and doesn't work that way.
If you listen to the rhetoric regarding running businesses like a business, it's all about collaboration and empowerment and trust. And all of the rhetoric coming out of the business community regarding schools is about intimidation and rewards and penalties and accountability. It's completely antithetical to anything that we talk about in terms of good business practice.
We're not stamping out widgets. We're training citizens, we're preparing scholars. That's what we do. And so I think it's a perception issue that's the fix, and I'm not so sure.
The corporate model doesn't work with all doctors. You know, the person comes in and can't be cured. Well, is that a reflection on the doctor? But yet, we want to put a corporate model on, I've got 120 or 150 or however many kids, and I'm supposed to fit them into a little shoebox, and everybody's supposed to behave the same way, and I'm supposed to have the same successes, and I'm supposed to make the same amount of progress with every kid, even though every child is different.
The National Center on Education and Economy reveals that the problem in public education is caused by the political system, not by the educators. The people who have the responsibility do not have the power, and the people who have the power are not being held responsible.
We are holding people accountable for things over which they have very little control. This makes no sense to me. I would rather say to people in schools, you have much more control over the program. You have much more control over how the money is spent. You will have much more control over who teaches in your school and how you structure the staff. So this is not an argument that everything ought to be decentralized. I don't believe that for a minute. It is an argument to say that the responsibility and the authority ought to be aligned. We need to hold people accountable for the things that they have some authority over at every level of the system.
When I started to teach in Finnish schools in the mid-1980s, we had a very centralized system of education. We had an inspection system. We had a lot of control from the central agency. So what we started to do systematically, first of all, we decided that we have to trust our professionally trained teachers and principals more than we were doing earlier.
These legislators, almost to a person with no background in education, believe that they know best about schools. And that needs to stop. That really does. We need to give educators some room to do what they know to do. And we haven't been doing that for a long time.
There is much doublespeak in education today. Behind the entities bearing names that sound forthright are actually profit seekers. The feel-good titles are smokescreens for those looking to earn the almighty dollar.
I don't think the public has a clue about what's going on because so much of what's happening is couched in this flowery language about reform and better schools and better this and children first and students first and me first. And it's all about not the children, but about creating profit-making opportunities for entrepreneurs and destroying public education so that the whole sector of public education can be broken open for exploitation by entrepreneurs in Wall Street.
They are using the names of groups, American Federation for Children, Stand for Children, Friedman Foundation for Educational Choice. I mean, choice is like one of those healthy forests, terms that people think it's a good thing, but look behind it, look at the money, and you see that these aren't people that really care about kids. These are people with business interests, with a political ideology that is contrary to the role of public education.
Finland trusts its teachers to do whatever it takes to turn young lives around. If one method fails, teachers consult with colleagues to try something else. They relish the challenge. There are no mandated standardized tests in Finland. There are no rankings, no comparisons or competition between students, schools, or regions. Every school has the same national goals. A Finnish child can receive the same quality education no matter where he or she lives. Education in Finland is all about equity. Like Finland, several other countries have turned around their failing educational systems as well.
One of the things that's very interesting, I've looked at countries that 40 years ago were low achieving and inequitable in their educational outcomes that are now at the top of the international rankings on measures like PISA. You see some real commonalities, and you also hear people tell you over and over again, we came to the United States and got that idea. They will typically credit their best ideas to us, but we have not sustained the kinds of investments in public education that we had in the 60s and 70s and even the 80s when they came and looked for what we were doing. And particularly in the last 10 years, we've moved backwards rather than forwards in implementing the kinds of reforms that these countries have used to propel them to the top of the rankings with high graduation rates, high college going rates, and strong achievement. What are those things? Number one, take care of children. They don't have children in poverty because they have social welfare systems that ensure that kids are housed, have health care, have food security, and have strong early learning and good child care opportunities. So kids come to school happy, healthy, well-fed, well-housed, and ready to learn.
I think that what we need to have in this country is a vision of education that is that the children who are poor need the same quality of education as the children who are affluent. And we've sort of given up on that. We're right now accepting that poor kids should just stand in lines, take lots of tests. If they get high scores on the test, that's all the education they need. We would not accept that for our own children.
The great puzzle to me is why Indiana, in particular, continues to resist investing in early childhood education. People of means recognize the value of it. We hear stories about people trying from infancy to get their children into the right preschool so they'll be on the right track to eventually get into the right college. Legislators should understand that those are things they would choose for their own children.
We must compensate and esteem those in charge of America's scholarly contributions to the world. Successful countries invest in their teachers, paying them well.
Number two, they have invested in a very uniformly capable teaching force. We have great teachers in the United States, but we have a very uneven system. They've invested in preparing teachers. In all the countries I mentioned, teachers go to be prepared to teach for free, completely at government expense in most cases, or substantially so, and often with a salary or a stipend while they get trained. They've raised the quality of preparation for teachers, often coming here and looking at our best programs and then implementing that there. They pay teachers typically at the rate that other professionals receive, often at the rate of an engineer or other, well-prepared professional.
I keep thinking that we have to stop doing all the wrong things before we can start doing the right things. If we could just recognize that the path we're on now is the wrong path, it's taking us in the wrong direction, then we could stop and think and say, let's figure out what the right direction is. The right direction is one that respects the professionals in the classroom, that gives them the freedom to make decisions, and that enables them to make judgments not based on test scores, but make professional judgments based on what they know, and to work with their colleagues, not in competition with one another, but as a team, because that's the way schools work. They work as it's a collaboration amongst professionals.
Public education must generate well-rounded citizens who, beginning at a young age, learn science and math and absorb great literary works and languages while painting, singing, acting, and running outside to the playground.
There have been reforms all over the world, certainly in these high-achieving countries, to focus on innovation, science, technology, problem-solving, multiple foreign languages, starting in elementary school. They value art, music, physical fitness because they want well-rounded human beings, and also that builds their cognitive capacity.
When I look at the people who graduated high school with me, there are lawyers, there are doctors, there are people who have gone on to do amazing things, people who have gone on to music production, people who are touring the world with their music. And this is out of a small public school in Indiana. And the students here are the same. They have great potential to do those things, as long as I can give them that outlet. I need to be able to give them that ability to explore what they know.
The dreamers of today are the doers of tomorrow. You want to talk about what a teacher can do? Start challenging kids to dream about doing things that are almost so far out. Going to the moon for me was almost, to some degree, like science fiction. Curiosity is the essence of human existence, and maybe that's another ingredient into our educational process. Inspire kids, focus them on dreams to do things that they thought weren't possible, and stimulate their curiosity. I tell you what, you want a measure of education? When kids start asking questions, that means they're interested, they're curious, they want to know more. And when kids want to know more, they educate themselves effectively.
Public education looks different from a distance. Looking back and connecting the dots, we see that public education helps to create lives that contribute to the cosmos. Parents are the launch pad. Teachers are the fuel to keep a child floating toward the moon, the dream.
The way we educate our kids is the most important infrastructure investment that we make. It's more important than roads and bridges and airports and prisons and everything else we spend money on in this state. It's by far the most important thing we do for the future of our economy and, for the future of the people in the state, which is ultimately what the government is there to represent.
If we're going to move from a model that perfectly served an industrial society to one that now serves this knowledge-based cognitive age, if we're going to change the schools, we're going to change America. And the only way we're going to do that is if we all come together and join in that process.
Public education has a track record of incredible triumphs. Many changed our entire society. Public education fostered hard-wrought integration. Public education welcomes special needs children and educates those with language barriers. Public education needs to pat itself on the back and march proudly towards new victories.
Public schools are not dead by any means, and we've just faced some new challenges, but we'll overcome.
I think that there are many changes we need to make to improve our schools, but I think we have to go forward with the belief that our public education system is a very vital, essential part of our democracy, and that we have to protect public education, we have to respect teachers, and we have to recognize that public education has accomplished incredible things in this country.
You can help public education accomplish even more. Walk into a school, step inside a classroom, sit down in the school library, ask a teacher what you can do, look a child in the face.
I had a great piece of advice from my father about being involved. A lot of people want to complain and moan about the way things are. And the only people that have the opportunity or the right to do that are those that are that are moving, that are working, that are doing something. So if you don't like how something is being done, get involved, find an opportunity. Our schools are desperate for volunteers and people that want to help, and there's a lot to be done. There's more to be done now more than ever.
I can't find another place that you can make more impact. I was trying to do the math this morning and I quit because it was too much. But I probably run through 200 different kids a year for 33 years. I'm touching internationally throughout the world, and I don't know of any other jobs that you can probably have that wide of a aspect in changing the world.
In education, public schools do work. They are not failing. As a public institution, they made us who we are today, and if we unleash their full potential, if we get government out of the way, we believe, without question, that public education can take us well into tomorrow and make us the academic world leader once again. How do we get there? Well, let's have that discussion. For teachers like Diana Rathert, let's find a way to fight our way back up to the top. Let's believe in our teachers, because a teacher affects eternity. Let's provide a shared sense of culture. That's what public education is about. Let's ask our kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? Public education is the launch pad to send our children into an orbit of possibilities. Let's give Susan Kwiatkowski time to sashay in the hallway, to talk to students, network with teachers, enjoy breathing space for creative lesson planning. Teachers need the freedom to teach like Dave Ruth, where a science test is a walk in the woods to identify with the world. Principals like Margaret Pissarros need more time to chat with students during everyday moments. Time to help a student believe in himself. Time that helps a parent know his son will succeed. Let's put trust and fairness back into public education. Listen to the people who actually work in education. Let's make the United States of America a world-class education system. That's just the beginning. And now we invite you to join us. Let's support public education with a renewed sense of purpose and a renewed spirit. Let's make our public schools the best that they can be. Let's all together rise above the mark.
teacher can see us every day and know what we do and stuff like that. Well, legislators, they don't even know us. They don't know what we look like.
for those that are watching, I want them to be able to really see what's going on in public education. I want them to see what is happening to our public education system, which is so important to all of our way of life. And I hope that to those watching, they will listen carefully to what we're saying. And once they have researched and they've looked into what we're saying, I believe that they will get involved and help us to ensure that all of our children have the highest quality education possible so that they all can rise above the mark.